Welcome to Book Banter with me, your host, Dianne Burkhart. I hope you will join me every Wednesday as we explore all things to do with, well, books. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. Today is June 7th, 2023, and we have got a great show for you today. I have my very first children's picture book author, and you are going to love her. So I'm actually not going to spend a lot of time talking at the beginning of this episode. Just be sure to hang around until the end when I will give you all of the updates about what is going on with Burkhart Books, my Into the West Saga serial, my thriller, The Touch, and of course, future guests that are coming up for Book Banter with Dianne Burkhart. So let's get right to that interview. Please welcome to the show, Diann Floyd Boehm. We have a fantastic guest with us today. I am so excited to have a children's picture book author. You are the first one that I've actually gotten onto the show. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'd be happy to. First of all, thank you so much for having me. And golly jeepers, that's so exciting to be the first children's author. That's pretty cool, actually. I started off as a classroom teacher, actually, but I have always been a storyteller. And it dawned on me that I should put my stories to print. And that's when I was like, I'm going to do this. And everyone looked at me like, are you nuts? So anyway, I said, I don't care. I'm going to give it a whirl. And it took a while. There was ups and downs and so forth, but I never stopped. And as my mother would always say, if you want something, you have to have fire in the gut. So I decided that that's what I wanted. And now I have several books out and a new one about to come out. And I feel very blessed because people are enjoying the stories.
Well, now it seems to me like there was a progression where at first you weren't illustrating your own storybooks, but then later on, I see your name also listed as illustrator.
Yes. In a way, it's kind of misleading because I have illustrated some of my children's books. And actually, when I first started in The Little Girl in the Moon, I thought, how on earth are people going to understand my imagination? And because I interviewed several illustrators and they just didn't get it, this girl living on the moon and so forth, which I thought, it's very spacey. Why not? Mm-hmm. And, but they didn't get it. So then I was taking an art class because I am not an illustrator. I never illustrated and I need to take art classes. And it dawned on me I could do this. Silk painting makes it a lot easier to illustrate, I discovered. And so I decided I'm going to do this. And it took practice and I did it. But where I'm at now is my books need really gifted artists. But I also feel like I've been so blessed to have my books published that I want to open the doors for other artists who've dreamed of being an illustrator. And so I decided that I would have different looks, which a lot of authors kind of like, you're crazy. And I'm like, I don't care. I want to open the door for other people and let their dreams come true. So that's where I'm at now.
Actually, I kind of like that your books aren't all cookie cutter with just a different story to it. They all have very different looks to them. And that was one of the things that appealed to me.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. That means a lot.
What kind of an age range do you think most of your picture books are geared for?
Excellent question. Professionally, you have to pick an age level. Mm-hmm. I like to think of my books as stories that are multi-level in their thinking. So how one child is going to take it in, a parent is going to say, oh my gosh, she's talking to me. But depending on the story, it could be anywhere from preschool to first grade or kindergarten to fourth grade. But again, like, for example, A Time to Fly is all about a little bird who doesn't want to leave the nest, even though its siblings had left the nest. And it took a lot of coaxing for the mama to get the bird to believe that it could fly. And the point of the story was to show that, yeah, some things you're like, oh gosh, can I do it? Can I do it? And then you do it and you're like, oh my goodness, I can do it, and then it's the same for us adults. We're like, should I take this new job? Oh, I don't know. Do I know all the skills, and you have this battle in your head, and all of a sudden you take the job and you're like, I don't know what I was so worried about. It's so awesome, right? So I like to think my books are for everybody.
Yeah, I think A Time to Fly would actually make a really good gift for somebody who is starting just a new venture.
Absolutely.
I mean, it wouldn't even have to be somebody who's young, somebody who's facing retirement and not knowing what to do next.
You're right on. You're so right. And that does happen to us, doesn't it? New adventures and chapters in life. Yeah, Time to Fly definitely shows that. And the kindness and the love that the mom and dad show in the story, the kids get very excited about. And this other book, Charlie and the Tire Swing, I'm a big believer in knowing your family history. And sometimes by knowing who your great great grandpa was, you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't think I was like anybody in the family, but actually I'm like my great great grandpa. That story brings in, it's very generational, and it's a grandpa telling a story that brings in great grandpas and a grandma and so forth. A person reading the story to their loved one might not even be able to get through the story and have to break it in half, which is what I hope for, because the little kid might say, well, do I have a great grandpa? Who's my great grandpa? Who's my great grandma? Tell me, and they're off on their own family history adventure.
One of my friends that I was just talking to the other day, that it's sad how many people will pass and people in the family do not know their history. They're missing out so many great stories where the family came from and why we are where we are at this point in our life. When those people are gone, the stories are gone. So we need to actually start talking more about them and carrying that information forward into our lives, because it's where we came from.
Absolutely. And I think it's harder now, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but because we wait longer to have children, we might miss out on knowing our grandma or our grandpa, our great grandma and grandpa. And there's all these good reasons for the waiting, because, education and everything's so important. But at the same time, I feel so blessed because my mom had me at 21 and she had 6 children. People were like going, oh my goodness gracious, 6 kids, what would I do? But, she was the trailblazer. She worked, she raised a family with my dad, etc. But I knew my great grandma. And if I close my eyes, I can feel my great grandma brushing my hair and singing in my ear. I mean, how lovely is that, right?
Yeah. And it's sad how many people miss out on those kinds of memories.
Yeah. And also, I think, and because you're a woman of the world, discovering different places and loving different countries and cultures, which I do as well, that, when you know your family history, and so I'm in America, and I know for a fact that a lot of my family came from the UK on one side of the family, like I am a Heinz 57 UK, but on my daddy's side of the family, it's the UK plus Belgium. And so, because his mama's family came from Belgium. And so when I start reading the different stories, because on both sides of my family, my mom and dad, they were very good about telling us our family history. And so you're like, okay, so my great grandma, her nickname was Belle, and it was to remind her that her family came from Belgium. And I just I always thought that was such a great story. And then you want to learn about those countries because, a little bit of you is in them. And maybe we can find peace on earth the closest that we possibly can by understanding our family history, where we came from, and have delight in those different cultures. So I try to look for the positive in everything.
Have you been to Belgium?
I have only been to Belgium once, very small amount of time. Belgium and Denmark, where I was able to do some work as a classroom educator, speaker, and so forth. So that was kind of fun. But I've been all over the UK with the exception of Scotland, which I hope to do soon. But I predominantly have lived in the Philippines and in the Middle East and Dubai, but also went to Saudi Arabia quite a bit because of my husband's work.
I would think Dubai would be amazing because it's just so progressive in its architecture and a lot of the electronic offerings. I believe that's the place where they actually have holograms in their mall.
Yes, they do. I think they were one of the first ones, but yes, they do. It was pretty cool, the first one that I saw. I think Well, I have many friends still there. But I think what I love about Dubai, and I was there 14 years, so I watched it mature and so forth, is that the government does a beautiful job of showing how people from all over the world can come from all walks of life, have different faiths, practice their faith, and have peace on earth. When I come back home and I get to educate and speak to people about the Middle East, I can open their eyes to some of the beauty that the Middle East has to offer.
That's one of the things that I do like about where we live here in Germany. We live in Dusseldorf. And I'm always telling people, you can go sit in the main train station here in the center of town and hear just about every language you could ever imagine on earth. It is just amazing how diverse this city is. It's incredible. On just our street, we have people from the Middle East. We have people from Russia. We have, of course, a lot of Germans. We have people from Turkey. There's a couple of families from the Ukraine. I mean, so just walking up and down our street with our dog, we meet so many people from different countries. It's incredible.
And what a blessing that is. It's such that old saying that you don't know what you like until you know them. You're afraid of what you don't know, right? Mm-hmm. But when you can experience different cultures and discover how much you are alike, it just softens and brings love and joy, I think.
Well, and that's one thing that you and I also have in common is we're both Midwest girls.
Yes, I discovered that. You're Kansas, right?
Mm-hmm. And my dad is actually from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oh my gosh, we do have something in common. Because my dad was born in Iola, Kansas, and moved to Tulsa.
That's hilarious.
Too funny. Yeah.
See, really my aunt, most of my life, my aunt was living in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and my grandfather had moved from Tulsa to Silver Springs.
Mm-hmm. I know both places.
So. Yeah, we spent a lot of time there.
There's a small town called Collinsville, Oklahoma, which is, I guess, further northeast from Broken Arrow. And my daddy went to school there. That's where he grew up. It's a very small town. And I love helping people, and I like keeping my daddy's memory alive. And again, I believe in if you've been blessed, you need to turn around and bless others. Mm-hmm. And so we give a small scholarship in my daddy's name, a music and a sports scholarship every year.
That's nice.
Yeah, thanks. Well, like I said, it makes you feel good, because the kids are so appreciative,
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Now, from what I can see, you have at least 5 picture books. There's the Charlie and the Tire Swing, A Time to Fly, A Song of Peace, Harry the Camel, and then you have the Moonling Adventures.
Right, and there's like 4 of those. And the Moonling Adventures, I'm going to be growing more and probably turn them into chapter books, take a new twist on that. So the Moonling Adventures are all about little moonlings because we're earthlings. So the people living there are called moonlings, and they live in Tycho Town. So by developing the Moonling Adventures, it does 2 things. One, because I used to be an educator, I guess once an educator, always an educator, actually. It's a way for us to learn more about our own Earth moon. And so the kids live in Tycho Town. Well, Tycho is the largest crater that we can see with our eyes from Earth. And so that's why I picked Tycho Crater. But yeah, lots of fun things are going to be happening with the moonlings, even more. Right now they go on adventures, and they've been to Kenya, mainly because I've been to Kenya. So I wanted to share that. But there'll be one coming out about seeing the different birds, because the moonlings love Earth as much as Earthlings love the moon. So by showing commonalities, again, showing kids how somebody from far away, and because I write it in a way that I hope they come to love these little moonlings, that it softens their mind to wanting to love someone and be kind to others, even if they look different than you, to look for the commonalities. And then you can discover your very best friend.
I love that. That is an incredible message.
Thank you so much.
Another book that is not a picture book, Rise, A Girl's Struggle.
Yes. Rise, a girl struggle for more. Never in my life did I ever think I would be writing. I could even come up with that many words. It's a young historical fiction book. And I love to find my high school teachers and say, look what I did. But I've had the privilege, and this is something now that we're past COVID, I'd like to get back into more because I feel so at home when I'm in a classroom with kiddos and it can inspire them, whether they're 3 years old or all the way through high school. Have them embrace their imagination to discover things about themselves. But one of the things I discovered in some schools in different countries is that they're used to taking the exams, and then if they want to go to college, the government tells them where they're going to go to college, if they want to go to college free. So they really don't think about dreaming. They just think about passing these exams and letting the government tell them what they're going to do. And that was so foreign to me because in the States, we're taught you dream and you can be whatever it is you want to be, but you have to work hard for it, right? And so those two philosophies just like, oh, but then I come back to the States and I'm in some of the schools and some of them are starting to think, oh, I'll just let the government take care of me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And so I thought, I'm going to write about my grandma's story, and it'll be historical fiction because here's a woman born in 1904. And did you know there was no such thing as a word teenager? That word did not really come into being until the 1950s. It took a while to get there. So that you were either a child or you were an adult. So once you went through puberty, then you became an adult and then you were to be married. Luckily, my grandma's grandparents, they believed in education. But they still believed a girl needed to get married, of course, and the boys too. In those days, school, you graduated at 16. And they made sure all their girls, there were 9 children, graduated at 16, but they were to get married. Well, my grandma was like, oh, man, I already know what it's like to have 5 brothers. No way. And so, and I have 5 brothers, so I knew exactly where she was coming from. And so she was like, if my brothers can go to college, I should be able to go to college too. And her parents were like, that is just so foreign. I don't get it, right? You need to have babies, blah, 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 because that's sort of how people thought so much back then. And so I decided that if I could write a story that would inspire young people to dream about what makes you tick, what makes you happy, what can you do to make those things happen? If a woman in 1904 can go after a dream and go through everything she went through to make sure that those dreams came true, then a person living today, yeah, there's going to be hard times. It's going to be ups and downs, but you can do it too. And that's what that book's all about.
Now, I also saw one of the covers that it lists that it's a dyslexic friendly version.
Yes, several of my books, there's a font called the dyslexia font. And so I really want to be sure that people who have dyslexia, by the way, who are extremely intelligent, never think that they're not, have the opportunity to read my books. You can get it in Times or in the dyslexia font.
I do have friends who are dyslexic, so I found that really interesting. I had no idea what it was that made it dyslexia friendly.
Well, actually, there's another font that's come out that can be for both. But this dyslexia font, what I love about that is that there's a little bit bigger spacing between each letter so that you don't flip it backwards like an E, turning around, and it would be the opposite for you and I. Mm-hmm. By separating it and then adding just this little tiny tag at the very end that you'd have to really look to see, it helps the eyes for someone who has dyslexia to keep that word exactly how you and I would read it. And even if we don't have dyslexia, we can have that particular book and read it too. So let's say you had both books in your library with the Times font and the dyslexia font, and the Times font's out. It doesn't mean you can't go read the dyslexia font. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be more pages. That's all. If you go to the dyslexiafont.com, you can read about it and test it out.
That's very interesting. I'm going to be doing that later today. Now, you are not
Yay.
just an author and a world traveler, but you also do a lot of podcasting too. You have your own story garden show that you do.
Yes. My mom passed, and while she was really sick, I stopped it for a while, and then COVID happened, and I needed to really take care of her, and I need to start that back up. But I think I'm going to be adding it to my work with USA Global TV and Radio, where I co-host 3 shows. So we're in negotiations about adding the story garden to them. And the purpose of the story garden is to provide a safe space that parents can know that the stories and the authors that I have as guests on the show have a beautiful message to share with the children. And I think that's very important for us parents to know that there's not going to be commercials or anything. It's just for a moment, a little bit of happiness and la la land.
Who do you typically have as guests on your show?
Well, various authors, most of them are indie authors, and they find me, which is lovely. And sometimes I do find some of them through some of the Facebook author groups that I'm in. I'll read about their book and I'm like, okay, yeah, I love that message. And then I'll find them that way. I haven't had anyone, famous or anything like that, but that's okay, because the point is to give, especially indie authors, an opportunity to have a moment to shine and get their message out there. Because we authors, that's the whole point, is why did you write the story? You have a message that you want to get across. And so if someone is kind enough not to charge you to be on their platform, then yay. And so if I can do that for someone, then, I love making people happy. So.
Well, and definitely that's like the one thing that almost every indie author that I speak to talks about. The hardest thing for them to do is advertising, to just get the word about their book out, because most indie authors do not have a large advertising budget, if they have any at all.
You're so absolutely right. So correct. I just had an article published, I guess, a couple of months ago, and I titled it "Taming the Beast: Social Media." I think that is like the hardest thing on earth, because you just want to write, and all of a sudden, what I have to do, what? And if you're a young person, it's just like a no-brainer. But if you grew up in my time period, you're like, Dianne, I told you, you're not to brag about yourself. If you're good, people will find out. It's all about word of mouth. Blah, 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 blah. And you sit there, and so you have to rewire yourself. Like, you have to brag about yourself. Finally, I got it. But anyway, it was. It's very hard for indie authors, and so again, I feel like I'm not teaching full time anymore, and I have this moment. My kids are all grown up, and so why not do this? So that's what I did. I started the Story Garden.
What are the shows on Global TV that you're working with?
Oh my goodness. Dr. Jacqueline is an amazing human being. I do hope you'll come be on our show sometime. She started USA Global TV and Radio, and she has 36 different shows. I now co-host 3 of them. And the topics, they vary from all types of things, from mental health to authors and books, of course, and blogs. And there's the business show. I don't even know all the names of the 36. There's a show that's all about manners and etiquette. And that's phenomenal, because there are people from all over that have joined in with Philip Sykes, who runs the etiquette school in England and has helped people open their own businesses of manners and etiquette in their different countries, including Pakistan and Uganda. Can you imagine that? So it's pretty cool. Yeah. So it's a very international show. And Dr. Jacqueline, she's a real firecracker, go-getter, where she left the corporate world and said, I'm going to do this. That I've always dreamed of doing this. I'm going to do this. And so she started teaching herself and had a mentor and so forth. And 2 years later, 36 shows. And it's amazing, right?
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you get connected with Global TV?
Oh my goodness, it was so serendipity. It was truly serendipity. A friend of mine was going to be on, at first it was called Rapping with Dr. Jacqueline. And she let Dr. Jacqueline know that something came up and there was no way she could be on the show. It was like an emergency. And Dr. Jacqueline's like, oh my gosh, I have to have someone in this space. And she goes, well, I have this friend, which turned out to be me. So I said, oh, sure, I'll be happy to. I'm actually free. So let's go for it. And we just clicked off air, and we've just been together ever since. And so it's been really fun to watch her grow from Rapping with Dr. Jacqueline to this huge, amazing global network with a large number of viewers globally. So, but that's how I got to know her, was a friend through a friend. Yeah, it was meant to be, I think.
So you started out as an educator, and then you're an author and illustrator. You're also a speaker. You will often go out to different schools and do presentations there. What do you usually do for that kind of a meet and greet event?
Again, most of this was pre-COVID. I want to get back into it. I absolutely love going to conferences, being a guest author at a school, and I don't have a cookie cutter presentation. I ask, what is the purpose that you want to convey at that particular time? Because everybody has something different for their messages for that particular event. And then I will design something that works for that particular audience that I'm going to be with. So obviously, how I would be with high school students would be so different how I would be with the little 3-year-old group or with 6th graders. When they put me in front of the entire school, meaning, let's say, junior high, I will make sure that these kids realize that I know that they're grown up, they're in middle school, right? And so my approach is to get them to relax, to go, okay, I'm going to go with her on this trip of embracing imagination, because that's my big thing. And I won't be seen as a little kid, because, that middle school age is tough, because, you want to think you're grown up, but, you're not quite grown up, but you don't want to be seen as a little kid, but you want your friends to view you as a big shot, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I want to get them all relaxed, but then interact with them with questions. And then once I feel like I have them, and then we go and I will have them go with a story like Harry the Camel. Then from there, they will design their own creative story afterwards. Or it might just be a Q&A. It's really up to what the educators want to have happen. I absolutely love Q&As, though, because the kids are going to ask you honest questions, and you just have to be ready to field them. And they're going to know if you're authentic or not. So
oh, yeah, especially that age.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But when you have a lot of hands going up all of a sudden for questions, you're like, okay, I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
And you just like, you're bubbling inside. You're so happy. And then you're like, oh, please, dear Lord, give me the right words for that question. It's fun. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Now, have you ever written anything geared specifically for adults?
Well, I do think my young historical fiction is, even though we've put it for high school and up, I've had adults read it and they're like, I don't know why you have it as young adult. It should just be adult. And I'm like, well, I'm trying to inspire the high school kids to go after dreams, I mean, I'm really not a writer for adults. I just absolutely love writing for young children. My messages from all my books will be either all about peace, kindness, to love one another, and to dream and know that you can achieve if you truly, truly work hard. And yes, adults need that too, but don't ask me to write a romantic book, because somebody would find me extremely boring. There's too much nun in me to make it exciting.
It's like, I will write science fiction, I'll write historical fiction, I'll write, all of these other things, but I have not tried romance yet. I don't think that would be my forte.
I mean, yay for you that you're an author. That's wonderful. And B, that you could do science fiction and all of that. Oh my goodness gracious. My hat's off to you. That's hard work. And for those listening, historical fiction is to me is extremely tough. When I made the decision to do Rise about my grandmother, I had no idea the Pandora box I was opening of having to do research. And it made me appreciate historical fiction writers so much more because you want to, and there'll be a reader that will check your facts. And so you want to be as accurate as possible. You will lose all credibility if you get those historical facts incorrect. So yay for you. My hat is truly off to you.
That is one thing that I'm always telling people. I'll be like really writing a scene. I'll be like, oh, wait, did they have that then? So I'll have to go spend like an hour researching. Okay, did they have telephones on the East Coast then? When did the telegraph get to this part of the Kansas territory? It's like in my saloon, I have them serving sparkling water, but I spent like 2 days researching to make sure not only was that available at that time period, but that it could get from the East Coast to the Kansas territory and be in a saloon in my town. Those little details might pass by somebody. It was important to me to make sure that it was accurate to the time period.
Absolutely. And kudos for you, because I truly believe people who enjoy historical fiction, they're going to go, really? Did that really happen? Then they're going to go look it up and go, oh, she was absolutely right. So, but it is easy also. You start researching, you're like, oh, that was fascinating. Oh, but what about this? And before you know it, you're like in this other rabbit hole and you're like, I need to get focused again.
Yeah, it is very easy to fall down those rabbit holes whenever you start doing research, because I love research, so I can do that all day long. This is the point of the show that I like to do 5 quick questions, which we have learned rarely turn out to be quick.
Okay.
But here we go. Question 1. What is your favorite children's book that you remember from your childhood?
Oh, my goodness. I actually loved it when my mother would read Hansel and Gretel because she would do all these different voices.
And very German story. Kudos.
Oh, yeah, that's right. When I got older, it was Heidi. That's very German.
Yes. Okay. Question 2. What is your most memorable encounter with somebody at one of your speaking engagements at a school?
Oh, my goodness. There's so many sweet ones. But when the little kids come up to you and tell you that they are going to write stories, that's amazing. But there was this one child that knew I was coming and had read my books. Thank you to that mother. And had wrote me a story and had illustrated it. Aww. And told me this is his first story that I inspired. And he let me keep it. And his mom was there as well. And the mom had, of course, the original copy. But that was really powerful.
Yes. Powerful. Oh, my God. That is a great memory.
Yeah. You're like, okay, I'm not famous, but that's okay because I'm making children happy. So.
That's one of those moments you're kind of like, I'm not crying, you're crying.
Yeah, exactly.
Question 3. Is there an author that you have not yet had on your Story Garden show that you would absolutely love to have come on and read their book?
Oh my goodness, that's a really great question. I think it would be Zane Carruth. I think would be wonderful. She writes stories. Oh gosh, it's so imaginative. Abella, the first tooth fairy.
Oh,
and
cool.
Yeah. And Abella now has several adventures out. And I think her last one was Abella Goes to the Rodeo. And you don't get many books like that. So I think it would be fun to have Zane Carruth come on. But that would be fun. Yeah. Zane.
I'm just trying to imagine a tooth fairy at a rodeo.
I know. I know, exactly.
So question 4. I have read on your website that you are a world traveler and that you are also prone to traveling around the United States as well. And there were 3 states that you had not yet been to. What are those 3?
Yes. So Michigan, Wisconsin, and Hawaii. So the rule is that For my personal rule, you have to have been in the state where you've at least stayed 2 or 3 nights somewhere in the state to say that you've been in the state. It can't just be a drive-through. And so I can say I've been in Hawaii, but I was only in the airport, so I can't count that. Yeah, those are the 3 states that I need to conquer. And I need to go to Green Bay, Wisconsin for my dad in spirit because he was a Green Bay Packer.
Your last question, question 5. What is the best piece of advice that you have for anyone who has thought about publishing a children's picture book and just hasn't gotten the courage to do it?
Oh, gosh, that's such a good question. Look, if you've written the story and you really believe in the story, then you just need to do it. And we're so blessed now that we have the ability to self-publish, to do hybrid publishing, and of course, do traditional. I say go for that self-publishing just so you know that you've done it. And if you don't like dealing with the layouts and all that, and you don't have the skill, which is what I certainly don't have, I went with hybrid because hybrid, you help pay for the cost of getting it all done, not all of it, but I could keep writing my story and then I let the publisher do the back end that I didn't want to have to deal with. If you don't have the money, to pay an illustrator, then just tell yourself you can illustrate. And if you're trying to figure out how, I can give you some tips, but you can do it. Remember, there's books out. I forget the exact name, but the dad, he wanted to give his kid little messages. And it's a beautiful story behind it. But anyway, the point is he didn't know how to illustrate. So he did stick figures. And now he's a multi-millionaire because he believed in himself and he believed in the messages that he wanted to get across. So yeah, go for it. No more telling yourself no, just do it.
This has been such a fantastic conversation. I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show and being my first children's picture book author that I have had on.
Oh, well, thank you. I feel so honored and privileged and hope to do it again sometime.
I would love that because I know you were saying that you have something else coming out soon. So,
yes, Boomer, the Curious Bunny in July. I'm so excited.
That will be so cool. Is there anything else that you would like the audience to know that we have not covered here today?
Just that I hope you remember every single day to find joy and love in your heart. And even if we have rough days, to just take a deep breath and think about something that brings joy to you and brings back that smile so you can go on and have a lovely day.
That's fantastic. I love that message. And we're going to have all of your contact information in the description of the podcast, and it will be on our website. So everybody will be able to find you and your work very easily.
Thank you so, so very much. And I hope you have a blessed day.
So there you have my interview with Diann Floyd Boehm. She was such a delightful person to talk to. If you have anyone who has small children and you're looking for some great picture books for them, please go check out her whole collection. They're really fascinating and the stories are wonderful. So now about Burkhart Books. I had been saying that I was really planning on having Into the West Family Ties finished by the end of May. And yeah, I'm sure as you can guess, I did not do that. But I am so close. And I know I keep saying that, but I really am so very close to finishing this book. The thing is, the story is just coming together so well, and I don't want to cut it short just because I'm trying to reach a specific day to stop writing. I want the story to be really good. I have about 2 chapters left to write. They should go pretty quick. Next week, my husband has a business trip where he's going to be out of the house a few days. So I am planning on just sequestering myself for those days, and I will finish this book then. My hand to God, I swear it's gonna happen. But while that book is off with my editor, love that man, he's a saint, Greg Wood, in case you're wondering. He's been editing all the books in the Into West Saga serial for me. I plan on doing a redesign. I am going to do the last book, Into the West Family Ties, in the same format that all the other books in the series have been in, so that if you've bought the other books and you want one that looks like all the other ones, I'm going to do that. Don't worry about it. It will be there, the same format, the same look. But I think if I did like a little bit of a redesign on some of these, they might sell better. So I am going to do a redesign and have it all go whenever I release Into the West, Family Ties. I want to do the release of all of the new book covers too. So it'll all be one nice cohesive package and look really great. So that's my plan. So I'm going to get this book finished and ready to go. I'm thinking now it's going to be an August publication date. As things actually get set, I will definitely let you know. Now, as far as the thriller, I have been doing some incredible research on behavioral science practices of the FBI. I actually got into some of the old FBI bulletins where different FBI agents and profilers would have articles about the work that they were doing and how they were creating the science of profiling. It's been so fascinating. I love research. Oh my God. I probably should have just gotten a job as a researcher somewhere because I can spend all day just looking up information. It's fascinating to me, which is probably one of the reasons why I did well in forensic science, because it's all research. But I'm actually going to plot this one out. This will be a first for me. I'm definitely a pantser for everything else that I've done, but I want to get this so correct that I am plotting this one out, and I'm laying out a map for how I want the story to go and creating character maps for all of the different people and how I want their personalities to develop. So it's really coming along very well. That one, I'm hoping for maybe a Christmas release. I don't want to rush it. And it might even go, I might do that the very beginning of next year. I don't know if a really twisted horror novel would be a great Christmas release. It doesn't seem like quite the right time, but I will let you know whenever I get that all set as well. I'm really looking forward to all of this, and we have some incredible guests coming up on the podcast, Book Banter with Dianne Burkhart, of course, the one that you're listening to right now. So next week, June 14th, we will have the Once and Future Chronicles author, Angela R. Hughes. She writes this fantastic sci-fi series that's all based on the Arthur legends, and she focuses all on Merlin's story. It's really great. You're going to love her. After Angela, we have Donna Edmond. She is a photographer who did this fantastic book called Women of Wisdom. It is a book that is honoring their grace, strength, and beauty of women over 50. And as a woman over 50, I find this project fascinating. This photo project has also been turned into a museum exhibit, and we will talk about that during her interview. On June 28th, we will have Wendy Jo Cerna, inspirational fantasy author with several books out, and you will definitely want to check her out. Coming up July 5th, we have Sabrina Hammond, who is a publicist who represents several of the women that I have just had on my podcast. She is going to tell you exactly what a publicist can do for you if you are an indie author. You will not want to miss this episode. As a matter of fact, you do not want to miss any of these shows, so why not go to bookbanter.buzzsprout.com and subscribe to Book Banter with Dianne Burkhart, because if you love books like we do, you do not want to miss this podcast. And now it's the time again, people, for you to all please go forth and be very happy.